First, meditation of those things that may be called into doubt. If I give you a very quick summary of the first meditation, basically Descartes is doubting everything. He's bringing that everything that exists today, we don't know that it exists for sure, and we have all the right to doubt everything that is there before us. In some years now, since I realized how many false opinions I had accepted as true from childhood onwards, and that whatever I had since built on such shaky foundations could only be highly doubtful. So, whatever I know until now, whatever information I have about the different things that exist before me, in front of me, all those things and materials and man and everything is highly doubtful. I don't know whether I know of those things for sure. Hence, I saw that at some stage in my life, the whole structure would have to be utterly demolished, and that I should have to begin again from the bottom up if I wish to construct something lasting and unshakable in the sciences. So, whatever I know of, whatever information I have of different things, all of that has to be demolished, all of that has to scale down to zero and completely vanish. And if he wants to build something concrete, something that is for sure, that he is 100% sure of, that it is absolutely correct, then he would have to start from the very beginning. But this seemed to be a massive task, and so I postponed it until I had reached the age when one is as fit as one will ever be to master the various disciplines. Hence, I have delayed it so long that now I should be at fault if I used up deliberating the time that is left for acting. So, from a very early age, he realized that whatever he knows is wholly doubtful, and there is no surety of everything that he knows is absolutely correct. But then if he had to change everything, if he had to be very sure of everything, he would have to start from the very beginning, because there's nothing in the world that he's sure of, and that would be a very massive task. And in the early age, when he was of early age, he postponed this thing of knowing everything from the foundation as very correct and absolutely concrete and based. So, for that, he thought that he would postpone it to his later ages, when he would be mature enough, when he would be smart enough, and he had already postponed it a lot. And if he doesn't start, when he is writing this, so if he doesn't start now, that means the time that when he was writing, then he would be very, very late. The moment has come, and so today I have discharged my mind from all its cares and have carved out a space of untroubled leisure. I have withdrawn into seclusion and shall at last be able to devote myself seriously and without encumbrance to the task of destroying all my former opinions. So it's like he has clean slated everything that was ever written on his brain, all the information, all the knowledge about regarding different things, regarding different matters, about himself, about the whole world, the reality of whole world, the characteristics, attributes, everything have been erased, and he is completely let go of his mind. He has no constraints in his mind, and he has carved out a space of leisure where he is very free, and he has all the liberty to go in whichever direction he wants to achieve that concrete and 100% foolproof knowledge about that thing. To this end, however, it will not be necessary to prove them all false, a thing I should perhaps never be able to achieve. But since reason already persuades me that I should no less scrupulously withhold my assent from what is not fully certain and indubitable than from what is blatantly false, then, in order to reject them all, it will be sufficient to find some reason for doubting each one. So he starts by that, if I today reject everything, that all the knowledge that I have is completely false, I reject all of it, and I'm in search of complete and true knowledge of everything from the very beginning, then first of all I should have reason why I'm doubting it. There should be a reason why Descartes says that everything he knows is not correct, or everything is no he knows is doubtful. Not correct is not the correct one, but it's very doubtful whether whatever he knows is correct or not. So he is not sure, he is very doubtful that whatever knowledge and information that he has of everything, that is doubtful whether it is absolutely correct or not, whether it is delusion or whether it is just a figment of his imagination. So for that, first there should be a reason to doubt it. There should be a reason that why he knows everything is doubtful, because it is something that he has been known, and not only him, everybody else has been knowing since time immemorial. Everybody knows it from their childhood. So why? What is the reason why he's doubting every knowledge that he has collected since childhood? Nor shall I therefore have to go through them each individually, which would be an endless task. But since once the foundations are undermined, the building would collapse of its own accord. I shall straightway attack the very principles that form the basis of all my former beliefs. So he's saying that whatever beliefs that he holds, that for example god is there, for example 2 plus 2 equals to 4, for example apples are red in color, for example lemon is sour in taste, for example trees have leaves, all those former beliefs. So he would not go about doubting each and everyone and giving reasons for doubting each and everyone. So he'll give reason for just one. He'll just, share with us just one reason why he's doubting, and that reason applies to everything. Why he's doubting all his beliefs about himself, that he's a man, that he has hair, about everything that he holds of himself, all the material things, everything. So he'll give just one reason that why he is doubting everything. Certainly, up to now, whatever I have accepted is fully true. I have learned either from or by means of these senses. But I have discovered that they sometimes deceive us, and prudence dictates that we should never fully trust those who have deceived us once. So, of course, he says that according to him, according to Descartes, everything that he has learned till now has been through the means of senses. So, he saw an object, he tasted something, he smelled something, he touched something, okay, he heard something. So, all the knowledge that he has gathered was it was through the help of the five senses that he had. And he's saying that, but he has discovered this, that sometimes these senses deceive us. They do not provide us with the correct and absolute information. And according to him, and the prudence or the law dictates according to him, that something that has deceived us once, that has shown us that it's not correct even once, then it can be doubtful every time. So even if for once, the senses have deceived him, the senses have proven that whatever he's conceiving through the senses is not absolutely correct, then everything until now that he has conceived and received through the senses can be very much doubtful. But perhaps, although they sometimes deceive us about things that are little, or rather a long way away, there are plenty of other things of which there is clearly no doubt, although it was from the senses that we learned them. For instance, that I am now here, sitting by the fire, wrapped in a warm winter gown, handling this paper and such like. So, yes, whatever that has been gathered through the senses can be very, very doubtful, but there are then some things that, no matter what, are absolutely correct. They cannot be doubted. That is for sure that it is there. For example, he is giving the example that he is present at the moment. He's wearing a gown, he's sitting near a fireplace, he's writing on this paper. So this very moment that he's experiencing right now through his senses, that okay, he's seeing that the fire is burning, he can feel the heat and the warmth of the fire, he can feel the pen, he can see that he's writing on the paper, he can hear the crackling of the paper, all of that. He can smell the fumes of the fire. All of these things that he is perceiving through the senses in that exact moment is absolutely true and cannot be doubted. Indeed, that these hands themselves and this whole body of mine, what reason could there be for doubting this? Unless perhaps I were to compare myself to one of those madmen whose little brains have been so befuddled by a pestilential vapor arising from the black bile that they swear blind that they are kings, though they are beggars, or they are clad in purple when they are naked, or that their head is made of clay, or that their whole body is a jug or made entirely of glass. But they are lunatics, and I should seem no less of a madman myself if I should follow their example in any way. So now he's saying that, of course, what can be the reason? I can feel myself right now that I'm sitting on a chair. I can feel the warmth of the fireplace. I can feel the roughness of the paper or the curved surface of the pen in my hand that I'm writing. I can see everything. I can smell everything. I can hear everything. I can touch everything. All of those things, or maybe if he was sipping something, tea, coffee, he was eating something, he can taste everything. So how can that present moment be doubted by him? But then again, he gives us another reason that yes, that very present moment can also be very much doubted. And he gives the example of the lunatics or the madman who think that they are the, they are kings, or they are wearing something purple colored, or they are, they swear that they are kings, or their head is made up of clay. So all of those fantasies, all of those that imagination that madmen and lunatics have in their mind, all of them, that if a lunatic, if a madman can perceive those things with the help of his own senses, then there is all the reason to doubt that whatever he is feeling right now, that is doubtful. But then he also says that if he follows the example of the madman, that I'm not here sitting right now, that is not me, this is not the true me, I'm not writing anything, I'm not doing anything, that would be him following the steps of the madman. So he would be one of the madmen or a lunatic. But then, yes, he is stating the reason that anything that is perceived through the senses, and he has realized that through the senses he has been deceived once, that he has got the wrong information in, wrong knowledge in through the help of the senses, and that is why if it has been wrong once, it can be wrong. So everything that he knows till now is highly doubtful. This is all very well, to be sure, but I'm not a human being, and therefore in the habit of sleeping at night, when in my dreams I have all the same experiences as these madmen do when they're awake, or sometimes even stranger ones. How often my sleep at night has convinced me of all these familiar things, that I was here wrapped in my gown, sitting by the fire, when in fact I was lying naked under the bedclothes. All the same, I'm now perceiving this paper with eyes that are certainly awake. The head I'm nodding is not drowsy. I stretch out my hand and I feel it knowingly and deliberately. A sleeper would not have these experiences so distinctly. So again, he justifies his own point that he is basically, here he has criticized his own theory, and he has given a proof for that too. So he's saying that, okay, you say that the madmen think that when they are all awake, and when they're all okay, the madmen think that they're the kings of some place, or they're wearing purple color, or their head is made of clay. So even he, maybe in the present moment, he does not feel all of that, but then when he sleeps at night, he sees all of those things in his dreams. He sees that maybe there can be many examples. Even we see so many dreams. Maybe we are not far, we are running far away on a beach, or we are in a completely different city, or something or the other. So there are so many different dreams and experiences that we have while we sleep, and that are all not true, of course. So then again, these senses are playing with us, that whatever we know of our present situation is not correct, because in reality we are on our bed, we are sleeping, but in our dreams, we are somewhere else, doing something else, wearing something else, eating something else. So there's again a deception of senses, and through these senses, deception of knowledge and information through these senses. But then again, he again says that right now I know that I'm not sleeping, so this is all not a dream, this is very much reality, that he's sitting there, he's wearing his gown, he's sitting next to a fireplace, he is writing something. He can very much say that that is reality and not his dream or anything, because he's not feeling drowsy. He can feel that he is stretching his arms, he can feel the paper, he can feel the pen. That means that as compared to dreams, during sleep that we experience or that we see in our dreams, that is not, that is very very vague, that is not very absolute, and you cannot feel the slightest of things in sleep. So he's saying that right now I know I'm awake and I'm not asleep, and this is all not a dream, because I can differentiate between those two experiences. I can differentiate that when I'm in a dream, everything is not very detailed, I cannot do whatever I want to. But right now that I'm sitting here, I can stretch my hands as I want to, I can write anything that I want to. And this experience is very much more powerful, much more impactful than, much more vivacious than my dream. So definitely this is not a dream. I'm very much awake, and I'm also not feeling drowsy or tired or anything, so I'm very much awake. But have I then forgotten those other occasions on which I have been deceived by similar thoughts in my dreams? When I think this over more carefully, I see so clearly that waking can never be distinguished from sleep by any conclusive indication that I'm stupefied, and this very stupor comes close to persuading me that I'm asleep after all. But then again, he counteracts his own point that even this happens when I am in sleep. When he is in sleep, when he is dreaming something, he cannot realize that he is actually dreaming. For him, for that moment during his dream, while he is in his dream, that is his reality. Because in a dream, and that is with everybody, when we are dreaming of something, we can't realize in our dream itself that okay, this is a dream and we are actually sleeping. Because for that moment we think that is the truth, that is the reality, the atmosphere and the environment that we are in. So again, this is a deception of senses that we're again confused that while we are in our sleep, while we are dreaming of something, we can't really say that okay, this is very much more impactful and vivacious, and this experience is very distinct from the reality one, and that is why it's sleep, because it's very vague and it's not very, it's very clear and hazy. That means that it is a dream and not the reality. So while we are dreaming of things, while we are in our sleep, in our dream, we can't really differentiate the difference between reality and the dream. For that moment, our dream is the reality that we are in. We think that it is complete truth and complete reality. So then again, there's a deception of senses. Let us then suppose that we are dreaming and that these particular things, that we have our eyes open, are moving our heads, stretching out our hands, are not true, and that perhaps we do not even have hands or the rest of our body like what we see. It must nonetheless be admitted that the things we see in sleep are, so to speak, painted images which could not be formed except on the basis of a resemblance with real things, and that for this reason, these general things, at least, such as eyes, head, hands, and the rest of the body, are not imaginary things but real and existing. So now, finally proving his point of why he says that he's sitting there at that moment, his eyes, his hands, his legs, all of them are real. They are very much thorough and real, because even if we are dreaming of something, whatever we dream has been an already established fact, an already established idea in our mind. So whatever we see, of whatever we dream, sometimes it is possible that we dream of very unusual things that are not actually present. Okay, and this is a very famous example that is given, that many times we may imagine or we may dream of a very distinct, a very unusual animal, which is the legs of a horse and the body of a tiger and a tail and the face of a snake and anything, and birds wings and all of these unusual animals. But then again, it is not reality, it is a dream, because all of these things actually resemble our real life things. So even in our dream, if we are dreaming of eyes, if we are dreaming of hands, that okay, even if anybody says that suppose, what how do you know that you sitting there at the moment writing is not a dream and it's reality? How can you say that? Maybe it's your dream and it seems like you're feeling it real, because in our dream we can't really differentiate between reality and dream, that it is actually that we are dreaming, that we are sleeping. In our dream, that is that reality for for that moment, that is our reality for that moment. So maybe that these eyes, hands, all of these are a dream, are part of a dream. But then Descartes says that maybe they can be a dream, but then they do exist in reality, because because anybody sees anything in a dream because there is a resemblance of that thing in the real life, in reality. So even if these eyes, hands, legs that he's stretching, all of these things, they are not real, still they are real because they exist in real life. Because if he's seeing it in his dreams, that's not a completely made up thing. That is that all of those things that he is seeing in his dream have have resemblance to the actual reality, and that is why he is seeing a representation of them, or a second second representation, second image of it in his dream. So he has seen it somewhere, he has experienced it somewhere before, and that is why he's seeing it in his dreams. So dreams are basically nothing that dreams are not something that our mind creates on its own. Our mind depends on the previous thoughts, on the previous information, images, taste, smell, everything that the mind knows of, and then they are clubbed together and a dream is formed. So even our figment of imagination, if somebody say that okay, unicorns or mermaids, so mermaids or unicorns are not something that is completely made up of. That it's completely independent. What are mermaids? Mermaids are basically what? A girl and the tail of a fish. So again, a mermaid is not completely based on imagination. It has some resemblance. And the idea of a mermaid has been established by the already known facts. We already know how a girl looks, we already know the image of a fish, and we have simply clubbed them together. So that imagination is not completely independent of everything. That imagination depends on the different thoughts and different ideas that we have had in our mind before. It depends on the different impressions, it depends on the different sensations and the perceived knowledge and information of different things, and that clubbing together then forms our imagination. For the fact is that When painters desire to represent sirens and little satires with utterly unfamiliar shapes, they cannot devise altogether new natures for them, but simply combine parts from different animals. Or if perhaps they do think up something so new that nothing at all like it has ever been seen, which is thus altogether fictitious and false, it is certain that at least the colors which they combine to form images must be real. So even the painters that paint something completely out of context, completely that, people may say that this has been a very first of its kind, this has never been seen before. So that is not again completely independent. It's all a combination of the different things, somebody's leg, somebody's hand, somebody's tail, somebody's face, and then a combination of all of these things that a new animal is created. So it's not completely their imagination, it is somewhere based on reality and on the real thoughts and ideas and impressions that we have of the world. Even let's say that a painter creates a very, very fictitious and completely different animal or a thing from reality, that it has nothing got to do with reality. Even in that case, the colors that he uses for the animal are taken from the real world. So nothing is completely independent, completely imaginative. All of those imaginations are based on our ideas and impressions of the real world. Whatever we have seen in the real world is, we club them together and then form completely different things, that we say that it was independent of everything, it is completely new, and this has never been seen before. That's absolutely not true. All of those are based on previous experiences and previous impressions. By the same token, even though these general things, eyes, hands, a head, hands, and so forth, might be imaginary, it must be necessarily be admitted that at least some other still more simple and universal realities must exist, from which, as a painter's image is produced from real colors, all these image of things, be it true or false, that occur in our thoughts are produced. So even if you're saying that this moment that we see that we have two eyes and two hands and two legs and a face and all of these things that we have, even if they are imaginary, they're not completely false. Some part of them is true in the real world, and even if we are dreaming of them, they're not completely fake or fictitious or false. There some resemblance of these things is there with the real world. It can be colors, it can be the function, it can be the shape, anything, but then there is a resemblance to the real world. So there is some sort of reality, and even if in dreams we experience something, that's not completely false or new, that is already based on our previous impressions. In this category, it seems we should include bodily nature in general and its extension. Likewise, the shape of extended things, which their quantity, magnitude, and number. Likewise, the place in which they exist, the time during which they exist, and such like. So, all of these things, we should include bodily nature and, our length, height, weight, everything, the time, the place, everything. Even if it is a dream, even if it is, it is not real, all of it is fake and false, still it is connected to the real world, because it is a representation, a secondary representation, and a different representation from the real world. But all of these things resembling, there is a resemblance of all of these things in the real world, and that is how that we have gotten the idea of these things. From all this, perhaps we may safely conclude that physics, astronomy, medicine, and all the other disciplines which involve the study of composite things are indeed doubtful, but that arithmetic, geometry, and other disciplines of the same kind, which only deal with the very simplest and most general things and care little whether they exist in nature or not, contains something certain and indubitable. Indubitable basically means that cannot be doubted. So now he's saying that physics and astronomy and medicines, all these disciplines that have a study of composite things, matlab that are, not very made of so many different parts. Composite basically means that they're composed of several smaller elements. So many small and simple things have come together to form a composite or a complex thing. So all of these, in medicine, in astronomy, all of these disciplines, we study composite things. They can be very, very doubtful, because it is possible that those composite things don't actually exist, that we have just combined those things together. That maybe, let's say that this is just a very, very, very simple example and very of the top of my head example, for example, that in your dream you see that your eye is in your ear, okay, or maybe your nose is coming out of your mouth. So you see that it is only your head that has your hand, also that has your leg, also you don't have any body, you don't have any neck, you just have a head, wherein the nose is coming out of the mouth, wherein the eyes are stuck to your ears, wherein your hands and your legs are attached to the head. So it is a composite thing, because there are several simple and different elements. Then there's the nose, the eyes, the ears. These are different elements that have come together to form a different and composite thing. Okay, so that is a composite thing. So all of these things can be doubtful. On the other hand, the disciplines like arithmetic, geometry, and other disciplines of the same kind, because they are very much certain, they are very much indubitable, that means they cannot be doubted, they are very much true and certain and concrete, because they study the simplest of things. So they study the most general things, most simpler things, and they are not really composite things that are made up of several items. And that is why they are completely true, because even if we are in a dream, we can't really see simple things as it is. We will see, if we see that they are not real, then we'll see a composition of different things. And in arithmetics, in geometry, we don't see a composition of different things. They're very simple: a point, a line, a triangle, a square. All of these things, okay, of course, these are secondary forms, and they do not exist as such. A triangle does not exist in nature in a natural form. It is only when we trace it on a paper that a triangle comes into existence. But then again, these things study the most general and most basic things, and that is why these things are certain. They are absolutely true and they cannot be doubted. For whether I'm waking or sleeping, 2 plus 3 equals 5, and a square has more than 4 sides, nor does it seem possible that such obvious truths can be affected by any suspicion that they are false. However, there is a certain opinion long fixed in my mind that there is a God who is all powerful and by whom I was created, such as I am now. Now, how do I know that He has not brought it about, that there is no earth at all, no heavens, no extended things, no shape, no magnitude, no place, and yet all these things appear to me to exist just as they do now? Or even just as I judge now and again, the other people are mistaken about things they believe they know with the greatest certitude, and that I should be similarly deceived whenever I add 2 and 3, or count the sides of a square, or make a judgment about something even simpler, if anything simpler can be imagined. So there's another belief that Descartes has in his mind, and that is that there is a God who exists, and it has been all of these things are a creation of God. Then again, you can put it together. He says that it can be very much doubtful, and you can very much criticize it, that it is very doubtful. How can you say that God exists? So you say that I can say that God exists, because other than that, how would I know of these different things? And if God would not exist, then would there be any heavens? There would be like no heavens and all that. So now how do I know that He has not brought it about, that there is no earth at all, no heavens, no extended things, no shape, no magnitude, no place? And yet all these things appear to me to exist just as they do now. So if there is no God, then how come all of these things, the earth and heaven of them, all of these things appear to me as they do exist? There has to be a God who has created all of these things, and that is why I'm feeling that these things exist in real life. Because even if he's dreaming, even if it was all false, then that falsehood also somewhere comes from the truth. It has to resemble the reality and has to resemble the truth. But perhaps God has not willed that I should be so cheated, for He is said to be supremely good. But if it were incompatible with His goodness to have created me such that I am perpetually deceived, it would seem equally inconsistent with that quality to permit me to be sometimes deceived. Nonetheless, I cannot doubt that He does permit it. So then again, he is giving proofs of God's existence, that God exists because He is supremely good. God is good. The basic nature of God is goodness, and He gives goodness to others. But if it were incompatible with His goodness to have created me, such that I am perpetually deceived, it would seem equally inconsistent with that quality to permit me to be sometimes deceived. So if somebody points out that you're saying that God is good, then but then what about the different times that the senses have deceived you? That the perception has deceived you, then at those times God is not good, because you don't know the reality. You have been feeding yourself with false information. But then again, if God was not there and if God was not good, he won't be able to differentiate. That means he would always be in a perpetual state of deception, and everything would be lie and false. So then if he sometimes can figure out that this information that I know of is a deception and it is false, he knows other times that sometimes other times that the information is true. And that is why, just because he can differentiate differentiate the times where he has been deceived by his senses, that means God exists and he is good, because he has given him the ability and there is goodness there. So it's the same argument that we have studied before, that in Buddhist philosophy also, that you cannot really count upon good until and unless you know of the bad. Or even if you know of the light, you know it only because of darkness. If darkness wouldn't be there, you would never understand what is light. If there would never be any bad thing, you would never understand that whatever happens to you sometimes is good and sometimes it is bad. So it's only because the sorry, it's not the Buddhist philosophy, it was if I'm not wrong, it was Parmenides who said that we know of the opposite quality just because we know that the other thing also exists. We know of the opposite things, and that is how we can make out that the other thing is also existing. If suppose there was always light, you we would never realize that light is something, because it would be very constant in our life, and in the there would never be absence of light, and that we would never realize that there is something as light, because it was always there, it would just exist as it is. And that is why, because sometimes he's deceived and sometimes he's not, that is why he's able to differentiate. So this deception, this quality that God has given him, that some people might say, you're saying God is good, but then God also gives you times when you have false information, where you are deceived by your own senses. So he gives the reason that the reason why I am deceived sometimes is so that I can differentiate when I am not deceived, so that I can make out of it that what is certain and what is indubitable, what is true and complete information and concrete information, what is false and uncertain. Perhaps, indeed, there might be some people who would prefer to deny the existence of any god so powerful rather than believing that all the other things are uncertain. But let us not quarrel with them, and let us grant that all this we have said of God is only a fiction, and let them suppose that it is by fate or chance or a continuous sequence of things that I have come to be what I am. Since, though to be deceived and to err appear to be some kind of imperfection, and the less powerful the source they invoke to explain my being, the more probable it will be that I am so imperfect that I have perpetually deceived. So he's saying again that still many people have got many arguments wherein they can justify that God does not exist and God is just a fiction. It's just something that you have thought of and created out of your mind, that this world, this earth, there are heavens, there is hell, that has all been created by God, and it is all false, and there is no God because you have never seen it. So let them suppose that it is by fate or chance or a continuous sequence of things that I've come to be what I am. So he's saying that, okay, let them suppose that it is something else. It is not God who has made us to be, but it is something else, maybe fate, or some continuous sequence of events or different events coming together, or by a chance or something else but God. And that is why we are all here, and he has not created us. Since, though to be deceived and to err appear to be some kind of imperfection, the less powerful the source they invoke to explain my being, the more probable it will be that I am so imperfect that I am perpetually deceived. So again, that there seems that there is a imperfection in our life, that okay, you say that God is the one who has created everything, then how come there are imperfections? Because God is supreme, God is most powerful, he knows everything. So why didn't he create a world that is completely perfect and spotless? Why are there imperfections? Why are there bad emotions, negative things and tragedies happening to people? This is just a secondary example that I'm giving. So of course he talks about why is there deceptions in my life, that sometimes that the information and the perceptions that I get through my senses are deceived and are false and are uncertain and are doubtful. So why is it? And since there are some kind of imperfections like the deception, the less powerful the source they invoke to explain my being, the more probable it will be that I am so imperfect that I am perpetually deceived. So it is that, the less powerful reason that they give for it, that means I am even more deceived, this is even more false, even that information that to all these arguments, indeed, I have no answer, but at length I am forced to admit that there is nothing of all those things I once thought true, of which it is not legitimate to doubt, and not out of any thoughtlessness or irresponsibility, but for sound and well weighed reasons, and therefore that from these things as well, no less than from what is blatantly false, I must now carefully withhold my assent if I wish to discover anything that is certain. So, yes, all of these things, that God is there, God is the one who is powerful, and then all the arguments, counter arguments that have been given to me, that okay, if God is there, if He's supremely true, then why is there is negativity, and why is there evil in the world, and all of these things, I have no answer to these things. And it's true that all those things I've believed once, that God was the one creator of everything, He's the supreme powerful being, and all of that stuff. But for now, we will consider it that all of this is not true. But it is not enough to have realized all this. I must take care to remember it, for my accustomed opinions continually creep back into my mind and take possession of my belief, which has, so to speak, been enslaved to them by long experience and familiarity, for the most part against my will. So all of these things, now I am free of all of these beliefs, and now I believe that okay, there is no God, and I will not accept something until and unless I'm 100% sure of it, I have evidence of it, or whatever. So as he has done in the very starting, that he has just gotten done away with all the beliefs that he hold, all of them are false, none of them are true, and he has doubted everything. But then he says that okay, I have set on this path to doubt everything, and I'm also doubting that there is a God, and he's also doubting, and he has, for instance, he said he does not believe there is a God, he does not believe there is no God, because he's on a path to find the truth. But then he is saying that I am believing these things, but then my age-old customs, the customs which I've been born and brought up with, which has been a big part of my life since the day I was born. Through my life, half of his life was, arranged according to the customs that he believed in. For example, if there is somebody who believes in God, who believes in their religion, so of course that would be a case that their half of their life would be according to them, what they believe in, what they do, what are the practices that they do, what are the values that they take up. Most of it will be somewhere centered around religion. So it is difficult to doubt everything, from the beginning, and just erase everything from the mind that nothing exists. So it is against his will, against his customs, against something that he has been believing into for several years now. Nor shall I ever break the habit of assenting to them and relying on them as long as I go on supposing them to be such as they are in truth. That is to say, doubtful indeed in some respect, as has been shown just now, and yet nonetheless highly probable, so that it is much more rational to believe than to deny them. So it is also that I will not break the habit of assenting to them and relying on them. So yes, it is true that he no longer believes in it. No, it's not that he believes in it, but he doubts it, whether they are true or not, whatever they are saying is backed by evidence or not. So he has started doubting all of those beliefs, but in due cases when he needs, he says that it is much more rational, and it is much more easier for me to believe in them, to assent to them and assent to their truth, than just rather deny them. So somewhere he will not completely, but yes, he will rely on them if he's stuck somewhere else, if he needs needs that belief to be there. Hence, it seems to me I shall not be acting unwisely if, willing myself to believe the contrary, I deceive myself and make believe for some considerable time that they are altogether false and imaginary, until once the prior judgments on each side have been evenly balanced in the scales. No evil custom can any longer twist my judgment away from the correct perception of things. For I know for sure that no danger or error will ensue as a result of this, and that there is no risk that I shall be giving to free a rein to my distrustfulness, since my concern at the moment is not with the action but only with the attainment of knowledge. So his purpose with this point of time where he is doubting everything, it's not to bring a necessary change into his life, it's not to implement his beliefs into practical actions in his life. His main purpose is to attain knowledge, to level the arguments on both the sides of the concerned topics, and then to judge it accordingly, whether which is right, which is the more probable one, which is the heavier side, which is the more correct one. I will therefore suppose that not God, who is perfectly good and the source of truth, but some evil spirit, supremely powerful and cunning, has devoted all his efforts to deceiving me. So, yes, for the time being, he is not completely just doing away with all his beliefs, and in some cases, he will be relying on them. So, to answer the arguments that then why is there evil in the world, then he is believing that it's not God who has done this evil, who has brought this evil into the world, but there is some very powerful evil forces who are deceiving the senses, who are deceiving the knowledge, who are not letting the human or the man get correct form of knowledge. I will think that the sky, the air, the earth, color, shape, sounds, and all external things are no different from the illusions of our dreams, and that they are traps he has laid for my credulity. I will consider myself as having no hands, no eyes, no flesh, no blood, and no senses, but yet is falsely believing that I have all these. I will obstinately cling to these thoughts, and in this way, if indeed it is not in my power to discover any truth, yet certainly to the best of my ability and determination, I will take care not to give my sense to anything false, or to allow this deceiver, however powerful and cunning he may be, to impose upon me in any way. So he is not denying those things, he is not agreeing to those things. What he will do is he will level out the judgments on both sides of the arguments. Whatever the argument is, the side A and side B, whatever is being said against each other, he will level them out, he will record them for the purpose, and then after he has gained, if he believes to be all probable knowledge about that particular subject, only then he will come to a decision. For this period of time, he is not denying anything, he is not assenting to anything, because denying something is also taking up a belief which is not backed by evidence, and assenting to a belief is also, for example, be it the belief in God, that there is a God who has created the world and who is supremely good and powerful and the creator of everything and the most powerful being. So he is not denying that there is God, he is not agreeing to there is God. So he will first see out what are the different arguments that different parties, different groups, different people have to offer about the subject. Of course, there will be arguments on both these sides, and there will be many more sides than just two sides. Somebody will also have perceptions like there is a God but he is not supremely powerful, or there is also a God and there is also an evil energy or power, God is nothing but. So there will be multiple views on this. So until and unless he has gained access to all of these different views, only then will he reach to a conclusion. Until then, he just doubts everything. He doesn't deny anything, he doesn't assent to anything, he doesn't agree to anything. Everything is doubtable for that period of time. But to carry out this plan requires great effort, and there is a kind of indolence that drags me back to my customary way of life, just a prisoner who was perhaps enjoying an imaginary freedom in his dreams, when he then begins to suspect that he is asleep, is afraid of being woken up, and lets himself sink back into his soothing illusions. So I, of my own accord, slip back into my former opinions, and am scared to wake, for fear that tranquil sleep will give way to laborious hours of waking, which from now I shall have to spend not in any kind of light, but in the unrelenting darkness of the difficulties just stirred up. So he's taking the example of how a man is sleeping, and halfway throughout dream, supposedly, he realizes that it's not the real life, he is in a dream, and he may be enjoying, or that may be a very good illusion or a very good dream that he may be enjoying, and suddenly he realizes, being in the dream, that it's not true, all of this is a dream, all of this is false. So that is what has happened with him, that he will have to slip back into the darkness, in all the difficulties, the darkness that will surround him. By darkness, he does not mean literal darkness. By darkness, he means a metaphorical darkness, the darkness of not having knowledge in his life, not having correct knowledge, because now, as he has doubted everything, every littlest of things that he has believed, the beliefs and the views and the opinions that he holds, he has started doubting everything. And so it will be a very laborious task, a very difficult, a very hard-working task to establish one after the other what are the true and correct beliefs. So that will be a very laborious task for him. Second, meditation of the nature of the human mind, that it is more easily known than the body. So there are many perceptions about the body. Even in the Indian philosophy, there are many different perceptions of what is the soul, what is the mind, what is the heart, what is the body, and whether it is the soul that is actually alive, or whether it is the conscience which is actually alive, whether it is the sense which is actually alive. So there are so many different arguments regarding it. So Descartes also goes upon pounding on these questions, and he also talks about body and mind and sense and conscience, and he basically compares it to a wax figure, a bee's wax, and he compares one part to the honey, one part to the taste and the sweetness and the qualities of honey, one part to the physical structure of the wax, and one part to after if it is burnt, and all of that stuff. So yesterday's meditation has plunged me into so many doubts that I still cannot put them out of my mind, nor on the other hand can I see any way to resolve them. But as if I had suddenly slipped into a deep whirlpool, I am in such difficulties that I can neither touch bottom with my foot nor swim back to the surface. So definitely he is basically the meditations are in the form of like a story or his own documentary. Like it's simply like he's journaling everything down. So he's talking about that how yesterday, that means in the first meditation, he has doubted everything, and then now he's in a position that he's stuck in between. He cannot go to any sides. He's stuck in the between, and he has no other choice than to go ahead, battling all of those reasons and doubts and beliefs that he had held, and to ultimately gain the correct perceptions of the senses. Yet I will struggle on, and I will try the same path again as the one I set out on yesterday, that is to say, eliminating everything in which there is the smallest element of doubt, exactly as if I had found it to be false through and through, and I shall pursue my way until I discover something certain, or failing that, discover that it is certain only, nothing is certain. So now he will of course go on struggling and go on looking for this certain and indubitable knowledge. Archimedes claimed that if only he had a point that was firm and immovable, he would move the whole earth. And great things are likewise to be hoped, if I can find just one little thing that is certain and unshakable. So he's saying that just for the starters, if he could get just one, even the littlest and the tiniest piece of knowledge or information, but it to be certain, unshakable, indubitable, absolutely true. So that is something that even if the smallest of things I can get to be certain, and I can get to agree to be certain, then he thinks that from that point on he will have a lot of solved already. I therefore suppose that all I see is false. I believe that none of those things represented by my deceitful memory has ever existed. In fact, I have no senses at all. Body, shape, extension in space, motion and place itself are all illusions. What truth then is left? Perhaps this alone, that nothing is certain. So the only truth that is left is nothing is certain. All that he had known through his memory, everything that he recalls. Maybe he recalls a day spending in the garden, sitting by the bench and eating something, or maybe he remembers a day where he was having dinner with his family, or maybe he remembers a day where he went out shopping for clothes. All of that he recalls, all of his memories, everything is false, nothing had happened, nothing is true, and he will go on certifying all of these things from now on. And there is one truth, and only that, nothing is certain. He's not saying everything is false, everything is wrong, and all the beliefs are the opposite of what the reality is, but he's saying that nothing is certain. You don't know what is the real truth. But how do I know that there is not something different from all those things that I have just listed, about which there is not the slightest room for doubt? Is there not, after all, some God, or whatever he should be called, that puts these thoughts into my mind? But why should I think that, when perhaps I myself could be the source of these thoughts? But I am at least not something, after all, but I have already denied that I have any senses or any body. Now I'm at loss, because what follows from this? Am I so bound up with my body and senses that cannot exist without them? But I convinced myself that there was nothing at all in the world, no sky, no earth, no minds, no bodies. So for those, it may be a very interesting line of thoughts, where he's just he's just succeeding one thought after the other. That first of all he says that, is there a God who is putting all these thoughts in my minds, that the God wants me to discover the truth, or is it me, myself, and my mind who is controlling everything, and who is thinking of these things, or whether if I am the source of all of these things, and how come I am the source? Because I've already established that I don't have any body, I don't have any senses, I don't have a shape, a mind, any limbs or anything. I don't have anything. So can I be the source of it? But then if I don't have all of these things, or I've already denied all of these things, so what follows from this? But then what am I if I don't have a body, I don't have senses? So what is this that I'm experiencing right now? Or is it that I am completely useless without my body and my senses? Is my body and senses everything, or there is something other than the body and senses that is keeping me alive, or that is giving me all of these things? But then again, there is no. So he is basically succeeding one thought after the other, arguing with himself. Whatever that he has established until now is all uncertain, and he is trying to keep that in mind and going about that way, that whatever he knows in uncertain is completely not certain, uncertain, and that is why he cannot just, he have to start from the very bottom of everything. But no, certainly I did exist if I convinced myself of something. But there is some deceiver or other, supremely powerful and cunning, who is deliberately deceiving me all the time. So okay, certainly it should. If I start with I believe, but then there is something, there is some external power who is deceiving me, or is it me myself who is deceiving myself? I am not able to see the correct things in life. Beyond doubt, then, I also exist. If he is deceiving me, and he can deceive me all he likes, but he will never bring it about that I should be nothing as long as I think I am something. So that having weighed all these considerations sufficiently and more than sufficiently, I can finally decide that this proposition, I exist, whenever it is uttered by me or conceived in the mind, is necessarily true. So now he has established one fact. According to me, meditations is rather beautiful. I see that more than being just a philosophical or a difficult or a thinking or a line of thought, it's more than beautiful, where how he is first of all rubbing everything off and then establishing himself. So the first thing that he does is that he's not trying that, okay, if I am there, then there is some other powerful, cunning, evil power that is trying to deceive me, that is trying to get to the wrong of me. But then I will not let that power overpower me, and whenever I say this line, I exist. Whenever I say this line, that's of course Descartes saying this, that whenever I say this line, whenever I utter these lines, that means that I am there, and I'm necessarily there. I do exist, maybe in some form or the other. Maybe this body is not true, maybe this body is supposed to be something else, maybe the senses are not how they are, whatever it is, but I am something, and I have that ability to think about these things. So it's not that all the powers, be it God or be it an evil superpower, has you know complete control over me. That is not there. I have some part with myself, and that is, I realize that when I say I am, I exist. So I then partly agree and consent to my identity. But indeed, I do not yet sufficiently understand what in fact this I is that now necessarily exists. So that from now on, I must take care in case I should happen imprudently to take something else to be me that is not me, and thus go astray in the very knowledge, cognition, that I claim to be the most certain and evident of all. Cognition is, of course, cognition, the French for cognition. Hence, I shall now meditate afresh on what I once believed myself to be before I fell into this train of thought. From this, I shall then subtract whatever it has been possible to cast out on, even in the slightest degree, by the reasons put forward above, so that in the end there shall remain exactly and only that which is certain and unshakable. So now he is saying that now that I've ascertained for myself that I am there, I exist, now I have to reason on and doubt on, and I have to now basically classify on what exactly I am, what is the nature of my being, how do I exist, what it is, my senses, my body, my mind, whether they are there or not, whatever it is, now I have to establish that. And also what he will do is, whatever, even if any form of knowledge has the slightest of doubts, even the slightest of doubts, even if there's the slightest of possibility that it may be the other way around, that he will completely he will completely go do away with those things, with those beliefs. So whatever has the ability to be doubtful, whatever has the ability to be wrong in some form or the other, be the other opposite of what it actually says, it goes into the category of doubtful. And that is how then he will remain with something that is very exact, because he is going to classify and distinguish basically and he is going to remove all those things that have even the smallest of possibility of being doubtful. So all of those beliefs are to be removed, and then whatever he is left with will be very certain, very exact, and absolutely true, certain, and unshakable. So what in fact did I think I was before all this? A human being, of course, but what is a human being? Shall I say a rational animal? No, for then I should have to examine what exactly an animal is and what rational is, and hence, starting with one question, I should stumble into more and more difficult ones. Nor do I now have so much leisure that I can afford to fritter it away on subtleties of this kind. So if we start, okay, let's start that I am a rational animal. But then again, when he says that I am a rational animal, then he will have to explain what is animal and how that animal is rational. So he will have to explain a lot more than he is accepting to be true. So then again, it will lead him to more and more difficulties and more connections in something that again he will not be very sure of, because he doesn't know, for starters, what is rational and what is animal. So if he says that a human being is a rational animal, then he'll have to examine what an animal is and what is rational, and then it will lead to one question after the other. So he will have to start with something very, very simple. If he explains himself to be a rational animal, then he'll have to do a lot of explaining into what is a rational animal in the first place, and what is an animal, what is a rational, and then what is a rational animal, and how that rational animal is different from other animals. So it will lead to something even more and more explaining and more questioning. So if he what he's trying to do is he start something with very simple and very basic, that will not need any further explanation, that is self-explanatory in itself. So he doesn't have the leisure to just let it go. But here I shall rather direct my attention to the thoughts that spontaneously and by nature's prompting came to my mind beforehand whenever I considered what I was. The first was that I have a face, hands, arms, and this whole mechanism of limbs, such as we see even in corpses. This referred to as the body. So now, first of all, that he's establishing is that I know the simplest of things, that okay, there are some things that very naturally come to me whenever I think of myself and what I am and what is my structure. This is something that I have always noticed. Whenever this thought has crossed my mind, this is something that have always been there, and this answer has always come up to me very naturally, and that is his mechanism, that is his body, his physical structure, his face, his hands, his arms, and the whole mechanism of his limbs that he has. So that is something that even is there in the corpses. Even after a person dies, even then the corpse, the dead person, also has a face, also has hands, also have limbs and mechanism and everything. So basically, body is something that is not really related to life as such, or it is not something that provides life, because it is there in a corpse and it is there in a dead man. Next that I look nourishment, moved, perceived. Next that I took nourishment, moved, perceived with my senses and thought. These actions indeed I attributed to the soul. So the second thing that I have is a soul, because there is a soul, because I have nourished that soul, I have fed that soul has moved, because I'm asserting that I have a soul because I have moved from one place to another. I have eaten for my own nourishment, and whenever I have not eaten, I have felt weak, I have felt undernourished, malnourished. I have perceived things with my senses, that I have a ball kept in front of me, that I am sitting on a chair. These are some. I have tasted something, I have touched something, and it happened to be hot or cold. So these are something I have perceived them with the help of senses. So that means I have something that a corpse doesn't have, that a dead man doesn't have, and that is a soul. What this soul was, however, either I have considered or I imagined it as something very rarefied and subtle, like a wind or fire or thin air infused into my coarser parts. So this soul is like a fine thin air. It is not something that can be tied down to a place. It's spread over the whole body. But about the body itself, on the other hand, I had no doubts, but I thought I distinctly knew its nature, which, if I had attempted to describe how I conceived it in my mind, I would have explained as follows. By body, I mean everything that is capable of being bounded by some shape or existing in a definite place, or filling a space in such a way as to exclude the presence of any other body within it, of being perceived by touch, sight, hearing, taste, or smell, and also of being moved in various ways, not indeed by itself, but by some other thing by which it is touched. For to have the power of moving itself, and also of perceiving by the senses or thinking, I judged it could in no way belong to the nature of body. Rather, I was puzzled by the fact that such capacities were found in certain bodies. So now this is a definition of the body that he is giving. He is defining body to be such a thing that has a definite shape, that in a space, in a huge space, there is a definite shape that is not spreading everywhere, that is collected, that is accumulated into one place, that is not just infused everywhere like thin air. It is not, it is filling a space according to its shape and size. It's not basically spreading itself everywhere, and then you can distinguish that there is one body only. It is not possible that there is one body in another body. So a body is a very hard, very concrete, very different and a definite shape, that has a definite size, that has a definite shape, and that is not really infusible. You cannot break it and join it again, not something like that. It is very definite in its shape. It is existing in a definite place. It is filling a space, and in that space, whatever space that the body is filling, you cannot fit another thing into that body. That means the body is occupying a certain amount of space, and that space has been completely occupied by the body. You cannot fill something else within that space. And also it is it is perceived, it has the ability to be perceiving touch and smell and sight and all of these senses. But what about now, when I am supposing that some deceiver who is supremely powerful and, if I may venture to say so, evil, has been exerting all his efforts to delude me in every way? Can I affirm that I possess the slightest thing of all those that I have just said belong to the nature of body? I think I got over it all in my mind. Nothing comes up. It would be a waste of effort to go through the list again. But what about the attributes I used to describe to the soul? But what about taking nourishment or moving? But since I now have no body, these are also nothing but illusions. What about sense perception? But certainly this does not take place without a body, and I have seemed to view many things when asleep that I later realized I had not perceived. What about thinking? Here I do find something. It is thought. This alone cannot be stripped from me. I am, I exist, this is certain. So now he has established something that is certain, that yes, I am there, I exist, I have a body. But then again, he is again going into doubt, and he is again doubting whatever he has tried to explain through the soul. That is it really the soul that needs the nourishment? Am I really nourishing the soul, or is it the body that is moving? What is exactly happening? So it would be a waste of effort to go through the list again. But what about the attributes I used to, but since I have no body, these are also nothing but illusions. So what about sense perception? So he's saying that if I say that, okay, body is also illusion, body is something that is not certain, then my sense perception, my nourishment, my soul, my thinking, my thought, but then I have these thoughts every time with me. Okay, even if I'm not sure that I have a body, even if I'm not sure I have a soul, but there is my thought with me always. So that means there is my body. My body is there, I do exist, and I exist in this body. But for how long? Certainly, only for as long as I am thinking. For perhaps if I were to cease from all thinking, it might also come to pass that I might immediately cease altogether to exist. So how long am I existing? Okay, I'm existing right now, but for how long will I be existing? So now he goes on saying that, okay, maybe I will exist for the time that I am thinking. The moment I stop thinking, that means I have stopped existing altogether. I am now admitting nothing except what is necessarily true. I am therefore speaking precisely only a thinking thing, that is, a mind or a soul or an intellect or reason, words the meaning of which was previously unknown to me. I am therefore a true thing, and one that truly exists. But what kind of thing? I have said it already, one that thinks. So now, first thing that he has established that he does exist. He is and he is existing. That is, I am, I exist. Second thing that he has established is that he has a body. He has a face, arms, limbs, mechanisms of everything working together, and even a corpse has that. So he has a body, he has a whole structure. That is thing. The third thing that he establishes is that he is something that thinks, that has the ability, that has the power of thought with that with him, and he's also attributing that his life is existing as long as he is thinking. So basically he's saying that he is alive because he's thinking, and he's thinking that he's alive because he's thinking. The moment he stops thinking everything, that means he has ceased to exist, he is dead, or whatever he may establish. What comes next? I will imagine I am not that framework of limbs that is called a human body. I am not some thin air infused into these limbs, or a wind, or a fire, or a vapor, or a breath, or whatever I can picture myself as, for I have supposed that these things do not exist. But even if I keep to this supposition, nonetheless, I am still something. But all the same, it is perhaps still the case that these very things I am supposing to be nothing are nevertheless not distinct from me that I know. No, we. Perhaps, I don't know, but this is not the point at issue at present. I can pass judgment only on those things that are known to me. I know that I exist. I am trying to find out what this I is whom I know. That is absolutely certain that this knowledge, in the present, in the precise sense in question here, does not depend on things for which I do not yet know whether they exist, and therefore it depends on none of these things I picture in my imagination. This word imagination shows where I am going wrong. So then he is saying that, okay, I am there, I exist, then but what am I? What is it that, making me exist? Is it the soul? Is it the senses? It is mind, thinking, reason? What is it that I am actually making me exist? I'm not something that is infusing, or what is it? I'm not some thin air that means. What he's trying to do is basically he's trying to differentiate between the I and the body, that even a corpse has a body. So body is there, that is okay, but then what is this I? What is it that is thinking, that is eating, that is moving? He is differentiating the body with himself. That okay, a body is a different thing, because even a corpse, a dead man, has a body, but then there is something else, this I, that is there. So in a layman's language, you may doubt it to be, what is it? Your mind, your senses, your soul, your perception, your imagination, what your conscience, your sense. What is it that I, that I who's thinking, who's eating, who's moving, who's doubting everything? What is this I? And also, is this I is something else that I cannot completely imagine, or that I have no knowledge of, because that would be a different problem and thing altogether. It is absolutely certain that this knowledge, in the precise sense in question here, does not depend on things of which I do not yet know whether they exist, and therefore it depends on none of these things I picture in my imagination. This very word imagination shows where I am going wrong, for I should certainly be imagining things if I imagined myself to be anything, since imagining is nothing other than contemplating the shape or image of a bodily thing. Now, however, I know for certain that I exist, and that at the same time it could be the case that all these images, and in general everything that pertains to the nature of body, are nothing but illusions. So he does know that there is some I there. It's different from the body that he's talking about. He knows that there is some I there who's thinking everything, who's having all of these thoughts, who does all the work, who is there in the body, who's making the body move and nourish. So there is some I, but then what is this nature of I? How is the I like? Now this is clear to me. It would seem as foolish of me to say, I shall use my imagination in order to recognize more clearly what I am, as it would be to say, now I am awake and I see something true, but because I cannot yet see it clearly enough, I shall do my best to get back to sleep again, so that my dreams can show it to me more truly and more clearly. And so I realize that nothing that I can grasp by means of imagination has to do with this knowledge I have of myself, and that I need to withdraw my mind from such things as thoroughly as possible, if it is to perceive its own nature as distinctly as possible. But what therefore am I? A thinking thing. What is that? I mean, a thing that doubts, that understands, that affirms, that denies, and wishes to do this and does not wish to do that, and also that imagines and perceives by the senses. So here is your second definition. First was the definition of the body. Second is the definition of I that he is establishing here. That's something that understands, affirms, denies, and imagines and perceives by the senses. This is the definition of I. Well, indeed, there is quite a lot there. If all these things really do belong to me, but why should they not belong to me? Is it not me who currently doubts virtually everything, who nonetheless understands something, who affirms this alone to be true and denies the rest, who wishes to know more and wishes not to be deceived, who imagines many things even against his will and is aware of many things that appear to come via the senses? Is there any of these things that is not equally true as the fact that I exist, even if I'm always asleep and even if my creator is deceiving me to the best of his ability? So even if this is something, okay, it is a lot of, in a sense it is very repetitively saying, he's doubting the same things again, and is it really that he's sleeping, all of this is a dream, or whether it is true? Is there any of them that can be distinguished from my thinking? So his doubting, his understanding, his denying, affirming, imagining, is it different from thinking? So he thinks differently, he imagines differently. What is it that actually is there? Is there any that can be said to be separate from me? For that it is that I'm doubting, understanding, wishing is so obvious that nothing further is needed in order to explain it more clearly. But indeed it is also this same that is imagining. For although it might be the case, as I have been supposing, that none of these imagined things is true, yet the actual power of imagining certainly does exist and is part of my thinking. So is this me imagining everything a part of my thinking, or it is different from the thinking? Are thoughts different from imaginations, different from doubts, different from affirmations? What is it that are the different things that come to my mind? Or are all of these part of me thinking? So whether these are different entities, these are different things that I am doing, or these are all the same thing that is done by the very same thing. And finally, it is the same I that perceives by means of the senses, or who is aware of corporeal things as if by means of that senses. For example, I'm seeing a light, hearing a noise, feeling heat, but these things are false since I'm asleep. But certainly I seem to be seeing, hearing, getting hot. This cannot be false. This is what is properly meant by speaking of myself as having sensations, and understood in this precise sense, it is nothing other than thinking. So what he is trying to do is, if we talk about in a layman's language, he's basically trying to distinguish between the mind, the senses, the soul, that what is it, what part is the soul playing, what part is the mind playing, what part is the sense playing, what part is the conscience playing, or all of these things the same thing, or are all of these things different things? What is it? Basically he's trying to figure that out. From all of this, I am indeed beginning to know rather better what I in fact am. But it still seems, and I cannot help thinking this, that the bodily things of which the images are formed in our thought and which the senses themselves investigate are much more distinctly recognized in that part of myself, whatever it is, that cannot be represented by the imagination. So he cannot really imagine his senses, he cannot really imagine his soul, that what exactly is that. If I today say that, okay, you have a soul in you, or you have a conscience is you, so nobody can really imagine it into a physical form or something. How it is that conscience is, does that have any shape or size? Is it liquid, solid, or gas thing? Does it have any color? Does it have any properties? Is it big? Is it small? So it is really difficult to imagine what that thing is. But it is, yes, we can imagine how our body is, the structure of our body. So imagining that is different, our physical thing is different, but then imagining what, this part of I, as he's saying, that I that is thinking, and the thinking part that enables him to think, what is the structure of it, is difficult to imagine that. Although indeed it is strange that things I realize are doubtful, unknown, unrelated to me should be more distinctly grasped by me than what is true and what is known, more distinctly grasped even than myself. But I see what is happening. My mind enjoys wandering off the track, and I will not yet allow itself to be confined within the boundaries of truth. Very well then, let us once again slacken its reins as far as possible, then before too long, a tug on them at the right moment will bring it more easily back to obedience. Let us consider those things which are commonly thought to be more distinctly grasped than anything else. I mean the bodies we touch and see, but non-bodies in general. For these perceptions are usually considerably more confused, but one body in particular. Let us, for example, take this wax. It has only just been removed from the honeycomb. It has now yet lost all the flavor of its honey. It retains some of the scent of the flowers among which it was gathered. Its color, shape, and size are clearly visible. It is hard, cold, easy to touch, and if you tap it with your knuckle, it makes a sound. In short, it has all the properties that seem to be required for a given body to be known as distinctly as possible. So what he is doing is he is comparing the physical structure of the body to the physical structure of the honeycomb. You know how it is hexagonal in shape, and it is very definite, it is very accumulated, and come together, and it is the wax that is and it is the honey that is infused all over in this wax. Okay, so he has established that the wax from the honeycomb. So when we talk about a honeycomb is a whole structure. A honeycomb has a wax, a body of wax. It has honey over it. It has the bees all over it, and all of those things. A honeycomb is that whole structure. But if you talk about the body relates to the wax part of the honeycomb. But wait, while I'm speaking, it is brought close to the fire. The remains of its flavor evaporate, the smell fades, the color is changed, the shape is taken away, it grows in size, becomes liquid, becomes warm. It can hardly be touched, and now if you strike it, it will give off no sound. Does the wax still remain? We must admit it does remain. No one would say or think it does not. So, what was there in it that was so distinctly grasped? Certainly, none of those qualities I apprehended by the senses, for whatever came under taste or smell or sight or touch or hearing has now changed, but the wax remains. So now he is comparing the wax with the body. That okay, this was the wax. Now after the wax has been burnt, okay, some of its smell fades away. It also still has some remaining taste of sweetness with it, but when you tap it, it no longer produces a sound. That means it is no longer hard. It has become into liquid. It has become itself to be warm. But then also there is some portions of wax. That means there are some qualities of wax that resemble it, that remained and that resembled before, but then it is a completely different thing now. It does not produce any sound. It is not hard. It is not into a proper and definite shape. It is now liquid. It is spreading everywhere. Its volume has increased. As such, it is occupying more space, and it has not that particular smell also anymore. So he is questioning what was that particular thing that was holding the structure of the wax, after which has been burnt, after the go burning away of it, the wax has taken this form and structure now. So what was that particular thing that was holding the structure of the wax? And the same thing with the body. After the body is burned, there are some structure. There are the remaining bones, or there's something, the burnt flesh or something. So some structure of the body resembling the body is there, but then the body is no longer how it used to be. It's very hot now. After the burning of the body, it is very hot. It has changed its color. It does not taste that, of course, but yeah, it is not tasting as such. It has different properties now. So what was it that you know after burning has gone away, that has led to this kind of structure of the body? Perhaps the truth of the matter was what I now think it is, namely that the wax itself was not in fact the sweetness of the honey or the fragrance of the flowers, nor the whiteness, shape or sonority, but the body which not long ago appeared to me as perceptible in these modes, but now appears in others. But what exactly it is that I am imagining it in this way? Let us consider the matter. And thinking away those things that do not belong to the wax, let us see what remains. Something extended, flexible, mutable. Certainly that is all. But in what do this flexibility and mutability consist? It is in the fact that I can imagine this wax being changed in shape, from a circle to a square, from a square into a triangle. That cannot be right, for I understand that it is capable of innumerable changes of this sort, yet I cannot keep track of all these by using my imagination. Therefore, my understanding of these properties is not achieved by using the faculty of imagination. So now this wax, this melted wax that is in the form of a liquid, can take innumerable shapes. It can be, from a square can turn to a circle, from a circle to a triangle, from a triangle to a rectangle, from a rectangle to a star shape. It can take up innumerable shapes, innumerable sizes, however it wants to be. Okay, not exactly sizes, but yeah, there can be so many different ways that the wax can be arranged now. But then also he is realizing the fact that it's not enough. His imagination is not enough to imagine all the possible shapes that the body could have taken. Therefore, his understanding of the properties, that what was that particular property in the body that was holding that definite shape, what was the particular property of that wax that was keeping it solid in shape and definite and strong, and when tapped it produced a sound, what was that property? That is something beyond his imagination. What about extended? Surely I know something about the nature of its extension, for it is greater when the wax is melting, greater still when it is boiling, and greater still when the heat is further increased. And I would not be correctly judging what the wax is if I fail to see that it is capable of receiving more varieties as regards extension than I have ever grasped in my imagination. So I am left with no alternative but to accept that I am not at all imagining what this wax is. I am perceiving it with my mind alone. I say this wax in particular, for the point is even clearer about wax in general. So then what is this wax which is only perceived by the mind? Certainly, it is the same wax I see, touch, and imagine, and in short, it is the same wax I judged it to be from the beginning. But yet, and this is important, the perception of it is not sight, touch, or imagination, and never was, although it seemed to be so at first. It is an inspection of the by the mind alone, which can be either imperfect and confused as it was before in this case, or clear and distinct as it is now, is depending on the greater or lesser degree of attention I pay to what it consists of. So, it is the same wax or it is not. So he's come to the conclusion that yes, even after the burning of the wax, it is the same wax, although some of its properties has changed. But then he has also come to realize that he is not able to identify that wax with the properties of, with his senses, by touch, by smell, by taste. He cannot establish the fact that these two are the same waxes, or even by the fact of imagination. So what is it that is bringing him to realize that okay, even after burning of the wax, it is the same wax? Because if you see that in the its properties has changed. If he touches it, it's not producing a sound. If he tastes it, it does not have the same taste. It has maybe a burnt taste. If he smells it, the smell of the wax or the honey has gone away. If he tries to imagine it, so he cannot imagine that shape now, because it has no shape for now, and it can be arranged into any shape which earlier wax in the solid form could not have been. So, of course, the properties are completely different. So, what is that one property that is connecting the wax before burning and connecting the wax after it is burnt? But in the meantime, I am amazed by the proneness of my mind to error. For although I am considering all this in myself silently and without speech, yet I am still ensnared by the words themselves, and all but deceiving by the very ways in which we usually put things. For we say that we see the wax itself if it is present, not that we judge it to be there on the basis of its color or shape. From this, I would have immediately concluded that I therefore knew the wax by the sight of my eyes, not by the inspection of the mind alone, and if I had not happened to glance out the window at people walking along the street. Using the customary expression, I say that I see them just as I see the wax. But what do I actually see other than hats and coats, which would be covering automata? But I judge that hats and coats, which would be covering, they are people, and therefore what I thought I saw with my eyes, in fact, I grasp only by the faculty of judging that is in my mind. So he's saying that okay, I can say that I'm seeing the wax. Now he's taking the example. Okay, I see somebody, that there are people walking in the street, and I see them, and I realize that they are people. But I'm actually only seeing just coats and hats and maybe a face or some limbs and all. Then what is it that after seeing, I'm realizing that they are not just things but actually they are people? That means beyond the ability, beyond his perception of sight, beyond him using the sense of sight, he is also judging them in his mind. He is also taking in some other quality, that he is able to distinguish between, let's say, a table, or let's say a street lamp, and a person who is walking on the street, or a road and a person who is walking on the street. So it is not just the fact that he sees the person, he realizes that it is a person, because he is just seeing only a coat, a hat, or maybe the clothes that the person is wearing, the shoes, and a face, and the mechanism, the physical structure. So apart from the sight, and of course he cannot touch the person, he is not smelling the person, he is not tasting the person, so all other senses are not being used. So out of the five senses, the only sense used here was the sight, the sense of sight. So he is seeing them, but he is doing something beyond seeing in his mind, that he is realizing, and he is able to differentiate between a person and a street lamp, or a dustbin, or any other thing on the street. But one who desires to know more than the common herd might be ashamed to have gone to the speech of the common herd to find a reason for doubting. Let us then go to where we left off, by considering whether I perceive more perfectly and more evidently what the facts was when I first encountered it, and believed that I knew it by the external sense, or at least by what they call the common sense, that is, the imaginative power, or whether I perceive it better now, after that I have more carefully investigated both what it is and known it is. and how it is known. Certainly, it would be foolish to doubt that I have a much better grasp of it now. For what, if anything, was distinct in my original perception? What was there, if anything, was distinct in my what was there, if anything, that seemed to go beyond the perception of the lowest animals? But on the other hand, when I distinguish the wax from its external forms, and as if I had stripped off its garments, consider it in all its nakedness, that indeed, although there still may be error in my judgment, I cannot perceive it in the way except by the human mind. So here basically he's saying that if anything was distinct, that seemed to go beyond the perception of the lowest animals. But on the other hand, when I distinguish the wax from its external forms, that means when he actually gets to the quality of the wax, when no longer, if he is trying to explain that now after the burning of the wax, that wax, the burnt wax and the unburnt wax have no similar properties. Using all the five senses, also he is not able to establish that it is the same sense, because if he sees, it has a different shape. If he tastes it has a different taste. If he smells it, it has a different smell. If he touches it, it has a different temperature. And if he touches it, if he tries to hear it, so it is not producing the same sound. So with the help of these senses, just the external thing, he is not able to establish that the burnt wax and the unburnt wax are the same thing. That means that he is doing something beyond the use of external senses, beyond the perception by the external senses, to actually realize that both the waxes are same. And that extra thing that he is using is the common sense. That common sense is there in the human mind, with the help of the human mind, and not only the senses. So he is doing something beyond the external perception of the wax, that he is realizing that both the waxes are same, even though they don't have any similar properties. But what then I shall say about this mind, or about myself? For I do not yet accept that there is anything in me but a mind. What I say I am seem to perceive this fact so distinctly. Do I not know myself not only much more truly, much more certainly, but also much more distinctly and evidently than the wax? For if I judge that the wax exists, for the reason that I see it, it is certainly much more evident that I myself also exist, from the very fact that I am seeing it. For it could be the case that what I am seeing is not really wax. It could be the case I do not even have eyes with which to see anything, but it certainly cannot be the case. But when I see something, or when I think I am seeing something, the difference that I myself who think should not be something. By the same token, if I judge that the wax exists for the reason that I am touching it, the same consequence follows, namely that I exist. If I judge it exists for the reason I am imagining it, or for any other reason, again the same certainly applies. But what I have realized in the case of the wax, I can apply to anything that exists outside myself. Moreover, if this perception of the wax appeared, but there are no reasons that can enhance the perception either of the wax or of any other body at all, that do not at the same time prove better to me the nature of my own mind. But there are so many things besides in the mind itself that can serve to make the knowledge of it more distinct, than there seems scarcely any point in listing all the perception that flow into it from the body. But I see now that without realizing I have ended up back where I wanted to be, for since I have now learned that bodies themselves are perceived not strictly speaking by the senses or by the imaginative faculty, but by the intellect alone, and that they are not perceived because they are touched or seen, but only because they are understood, I clearly realize that nothing can be perceived by me more easily or more clearly than my own mind. But since a long held opinion is a habit that cannot so readily be laid aside, I intend to stop here for a while in order to fix this newly acquired knowledge more deeply in my memory by long meditation. So that what he is saying, that it's not only with the help of senses that I perceive my body and the other things, but there is something else in my mind, either be it common sense or intellect or reasoning or conscience, or there is something else that is helping me perceive that I exist, that my body is there. So it's not only the senses that helps me perceiving things, there is something else. So there's my body, there's a soul, and there is something else that exists that is helping the senses to perceive any object out there.